It's time for The Big Question, where you get to quiz top celebrities, public figures, decision makers and sports people via GBNews. My guest tonight is a true national sporting legend, Beth Tweddle, the retired British gymnast. Renowned for her uneven bar and floor routines, she was the first female gymnast from Great Britain to win a medal at the European Championships, World Championships and Olympic Games. Tweddle represented Great Britain at 3 Olympic Games. She's the 2012 Olympic bronze medalist on uneven bars, the 2006 and 2010 world champion on the uneven bars, the 2009 world champion on floor exercise, 4-time European champion on uneven bars, and it goes on and on and on. 2-time European champion. She's won everything, and since retirement, she won ITV's Dancing on Ice and has worked in schools across the country, encouraging young people to participate in gymnastics. I'm delighted to say Beth Tweddle joins me now. Hi, Beth.
Hi, thank you for that amazing welcome.
Well, look, I just had to go through your CV. We only managed a small portion of all of the stuff you've won. But how does it feel when you hear again all of your achievements?
Do you know what? It's kind of a bit surreal because that was kind of 10 years ago and I've moved on into a different chapter of my life. But obviously I look back with very fond memories from that part of my life.
So, how did it all begin, Beth? How did you get into gymnastics? How old were you?
So I was about 7 years old. I was very, very energetic as a child. I tried lots of different sports. I did ballet, I did swimming, and gymnastics was just the one that clicked. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan at first, but as soon as I did my first competition, there was just no looking back.
Yeah, and were your parents encouraging?
Yeah, definitely. We were a very sporty family, so my brother also played hockey for England, so I kind of grew up with a hockey stick, but that definitely wasn't for me. But they were always very encouraging. They followed my career throughout the whole time. I think they missed about 4 or 5 competitions in my
Amazing.
whole career. So yeah, definitely very, very supportive parents.
I mean, I have to ask, did it come from them initially or from you? Were they pushy parents?
100% it came from me. I was usually kind of tapping them on the shoulder saying, come on, it's time to go. I just loved being in the gym. I would quite happily have been in there 24 hours a day. And even when I wasn't in the gym, I was upside down at home. So 100% it came from me.
Were you born with physical attributes that made you a good gymnast, or was it just work, blood, sweat and toil?
Do you know, obviously there was a small amount of natural talent there, but I think it was the determination, the stubbornness. As a youngster, I never wanted to be proved wrong. So if someone said I couldn't do something, I always wanted to obviously do the opposite. So I think definitely it was down to the hard work and the graft and the kind of never giving up.
Now, I'm not bendy, but have you got to be bendy to be a good gymnast?
Do you know what? You would have thought so, but actually, as a gymnast, I was probably one of the most unflexible gymnasts that you could get. It was a case of manipulating my routines to be able to fit into what my body could do. So, yeah, when you look at me as a youngster, I definitely wasn't the most flexible kid in the class.
And were you always competitive by nature?
Yeah, I had an older brother, and there was constant rows in the house because we were both very, very competitive. When I used to go on holiday with my family, there was games of crazy golf, and yeah, I think sometimes we had to go around the course 2 or 3 times just so that I could win. Even if it was just an argument, I always liked the last word in the argument, much to my dad's frustration, I think.
How old were you, Beth, when the gymnastics got really serious?
I was probably about 12. Before that, I went to a club that was sort of 20 minutes away from my gym, from my house, and I did it for fun. I went to a national championships. I didn't get the result I wanted, and that was when my parents obviously spoke with my coach and kind of made that decision that he'd kind of done what he could do for me. He supported the decision for me to move to another club, and that's when I moved to Liverpool, and that was a whole lifestyle change, not just for myself but my family, my parents, my brother. It was an hour away from my parents' house. My dad used to stay late at work so that he could come and pick me up. So it was a huge lifestyle change. But I think if you ask my parents, they don't regret that decision at all. I don't regret that decision at all. I look back with the best memories on my gymnastics career.
What kind of sacrifices did you make from the age of 12 upwards? What did you miss out on that others were doing and enjoying?
Do you know, a lot of people always ask me this question, and actually when I look back, I don't feel that I sacrificed anything, because the amount of opportunities that I was able to gain by doing gymnastics, the amount of countries that I travelled to, the experiences that I had, I would never have had any of that if I wasn't a gymnast. So yes, maybe I missed a few parties here and there because it clashed with competitions. But my parents were also very good at making sure I had that kind of gymnastics life, normal life balance. So if I had a weekend off, they would make sure that all my friends were invited round. Even on the weekends that I was really busy, they would make sure that I was still keeping in touch with my friends. And even when I was away competing, I was in constant contact with my friends. So I genuinely don't ever feel that I had to sacrifice anything to achieve what I did.
Did you ever tire, Beth, of the grinding discipline of being a top athlete?
No. A lot of people used to ask, why did I continue gymnastics till I was sort of 27, 28 years old? And I always came back to the fact that I loved what I did. From that little 7-year-old kind of just flipping around the gym, flipping around the house, that is the reason I continued. And yes, there was hard days, there was disappointing results, there was frustrations, but I always came back to, why do I do what I do? And it was because I just love gymnastics. And even since I've retired, I could never walk away from it. And that's why I still have so much to do with the sport now.
Were you unusual among fellow athletes for being so relentlessly enthusiastic about the sport? I mean, did you have fellow competitors and peers who did struggle with the day-to-day discipline?
No, I think within my teammates that I trained with, we were like sisters. We trained so many hours together, and you had such a laugh with them as well. And we quite often meet up and you look back on those memories and we're just in fits of laughter because of what you go through and the experiences you have, the competitions that you've gone to. So I think for a lot of my friends, they had a great experience as well.
Did you need a special diet when you were competing?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was a special diet. It was kind of a healthy, balanced diet. I worked with a couple of nutritionists throughout my career, and I just kind of figured what worked for me. And there isn't, I don't think, one size fits all. And it's a case of working with that support network. So I worked very closely with my coach, with my parents, to kind of work, what is it that I need to make sure that I'm getting enough kind of energy into my body to be able to do 30 odd hours a week of training, and maintain what I needed to do. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was a special diet.
When your career ended, did you go straight to the pub?
The one thing that I did do throughout my career, because obviously gymnasts weren't known for necessarily continuing into their 20s, and it was a learning curve for myself, it was a learning curve for my coach. So I still went to university, I still kind of had that social life, and obviously I just had to kind of be mindful of when I was competing, when I was training. So I still feel throughout my whole career that I kind of had there was almost two Beths. There was the gymnastics Beth, and as soon as I stepped outside of the doors of the gym, I could go and have that social life with my university friends. They understood completely the commitment that I was going. I just returned from the Athens Olympics when I started university, so a lot of them had obviously seen me competing there, so that they knew how much it meant to me to kind of be successful both in an academic way but also with my gymnastics.
And gymnastics is, as you've hinted, a young person's sport. How intimidating was it competing against fellow competitors many years younger than you towards the end of your career?
Yeah, I mean, in the 2012 team, even just in the Team GB team, there was a 15-year-old and myself at 27. But I think it just made me feel a lot younger. And the good thing is now, we look at this Olympics that's going on now, the average age is gradually increasing, which is so good for our sport because the longevity is there, the people are passionate about the sport, and it allows them to continue for so much longer, which it's only a good thing for the sport.
You did have a few injuries over the years when you managed to stay fit for most of your career, but how did injuries impact your career and how did you cope mentally?
Yeah, injuries, I would say, was one of the hardest parts of my career. I did pick up a few injuries with very bad timing, one of them being only 100 days out from the London 2012 Games. And for the first 24 hours, I was a bear with a sore head. You just didn't talk to me because I basically felt sorry for myself. Why is it me? It's always me. But within 24 hours, I always had that mentality of, right, what can I do that will allow me that when I get the all clear with the injury, I can go straight back into full training. So 24 hours of kind of feeling sorry for myself. And then it was put that to one side and let's make the positives out of this. If I've got an ankle injury, well, actually I can do a lot of bars work and vice versa. So yeah, injuries are hard, but I think having that support network throughout my whole career, for every part of my career, having parents, friends, my coach, the support of the national governing body is what allowed me to continue for so long and be so successful.
Now, Beth, clearly you were a remarkable athlete, but how much is the correct mental mindset part of your success?
Yeah, I think it's a lot, especially within our sport. And obviously we can get access to any support that we do need outside of that. My coach always says a lot of it was down to my determination, my grit, just to keep going even when things didn't go right. So I think my kind of mental side of it is what allowed me to kind of achieve as well.
And how did you cope under pressure? You know, that moment when you're about to compete for what is going to be an Olympic medal, you know, how do you manage that pressure?
I usually loved competing under pressure. The most pressurised situation had to be London 2012. I was 27 years old. I'd already been to 3 Olympic Games and I'm stood waiting to go for that Olympic bar final. And all I could think in my head was, I've got 35 seconds to prove myself. And that 35 seconds could be the heartache that I achieved in Beijing, or it could be the complete opposite of emotion of winning an Olympic medal. Thankfully, it was the latter. And yeah, I just loved performing in front of crowds. I loved that pressurised situation.
It must be a bit like taking a penalty in the World Cup final.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can train every hour of every day for that moment, but there is absolutely no way of replicating that exact moment. The pressure that you feel, the environment that you're in, the crowds that are there, there's just no way to replicate that. You can try, but I've never found a way yet.
So what do you have to do? You know, just that moment before the whistle goes, as it were. What is the mindset? Is it just a case of who cares? It doesn't matter. Is that how you relieve yourself of the pressure?
Yeah. So my coach before that Olympic final in London, she basically said, "Go and do what you know. No more, no less. I'll be proud of you." And it was a case of just let your body kind of take over. You've done thousands of routines to get into that competition. And for me, before I presented, I always kind of close my eyes, visualize the routine and kind of switch off to what was going on around me. Because quite often you were near the end of the lineup and lots of gymnasts were going before you. And there was, although I never watched the routines of gymnasts prior to me, the audience gave it away. If someone did an amazing routine, there was obviously a huge cheer. If someone fell, there was like, ooh. So as much as you tried to switch off from it, it was very difficult too.
Have you got a view, Beth, on Simone Biles' decision to pull out of one of the team events this year on the grounds of mental health?
Do you know what? It's 100% the right decision. She has been very open about it, and do you know what? It is the hardest moment. She has trained so long to come out to this Olympic Games, and they call it twisties. For us, we call it a mental block. To go into a routine or a skill and get lost in the air is the scariest thing as an Olympic or any athlete. And we have to look after the priority of the gymnast. Number one is the safety of the gymnast. She's put up videos of her training on bars this week, trying to get the dismount ready for the bar final that happened today. And it's scary. It's scary as an athlete because I know exactly what she's going through, that thought of, what am I doing? How do I even put my body together to get this skill together? So 100% it was the right decision for her, and it's great that she's got the support network to be able to make that decision.
Do you think it might be hard for her teammates to take that decision, though, given the fact that perhaps the chance of winning gold eluded them as a result? I mean, how might they be feeling at this moment?
So they will have been in training with her. She has openly said that this, what she calls the twisties, appeared just after qualification. So they will have seen her in the gym. They will have seen what she was going through. And as a teammate, you always want your teammates to be safe. There's nothing else that's more important. And they saw her leaving the arena, they came back in, and the good thing was she is a true champion, she's a true leader. She stayed out there with the support of the rest of the team, made sure she was their chief cheerleader, she was getting them chalk, she was doing whatever they needed as a team, and they should be hugely proud of that.
Beth, what did you make of the two high jumpers today that decided to share an Olympic gold medal rather than face a jump-off?
Do you know what? I heard about this, but I did. So I found it very bizarre that obviously that kind of conversation went on, but fair play to them to make that decision. But every athlete's different. Some people would have said, you know what, I want that Olympic title to myself. But obviously they've both jumped exactly the same height, so it's very difficult to separate them.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair answer. I've had an email in from Barry who has the following question. Hi, Beth, what's the difference between an athlete that competes and one that reaches the podium, as you did so many times?
That is, for me, it was coping with the pressure, coping with competition. You see so many talented athletes who go into competition and struggled with that performance element, and there's lots of different ways to combat that, whether it's doing more competitions, getting used to how you control it. And it took me time. Even when you were putting new routines together, I knew that I couldn't just go to a major championships with a brand new routine straight away. I had to do it at domestic events. I then would gradually introduce it onto the international scene before I did it at a world championships or European championships. So yeah, definitely being able to perform under pressure.
Claire has messaged us. Fame came with your sporting success. How have you handled being in the public eye?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I still kind of find it a little bit surreal that that comes with it. My main focus was almost my gymnastics. My main thoughts were always with that. If I was struggling with being in the kind of spotlight, then I just went back into the gym. So I wouldn't necessarily say I've struggled with it. Again, it comes down to that support network. And a piece of advice that I was given very early on in my career was value the opinion of those closest to you, and that is the one thing that has stuck with me when I've had hard times. I've always just gone back to kind of your family and your friends, and that's the opinion that matters the most.
Now, how does an athlete that's given so much to their sport plan for the second half of their life without all of the training, the structure and the competitions? Did you struggle? I mean, I know you've sort of stayed within the world of gymnastics, but did you suffer for the lack of structure in your life for a while?
I was really lucky. So I actually started preparing for my kind of transition outside of competitive gymnastics into the kind of normal world quite early on. I mean, I had a major injury when I was just 12 years old, to the extent that the doctors had said to my parents, look, she may never compete again. So I think early on, gymnastics wasn't necessarily a sport you could have a career in. And also my parents were very aware of how quickly it could end. So they were very keen that I obviously kept up a backup plan, which in my situation was my education. So I went to university, and then it was actually Steve Parry, who was an Olympic bronze medal swimmer in Athens. I'd kind of got to know him throughout my career, and he had set up a business with swimming and getting children doing swimming lessons. And he kind of said, would you like to do something similar with gymnastics? And my two passions were working with children and gymnastics. So I just thought this was an amazing opportunity. So I kind of set up the business prior to retiring. A lot of that was down, I keep going back to it, but that support network around me. And I work with a charity now, Switch to Play Foundation, that is hoping to help more and more athletes, because you do see that period when you step away from being a competitive athlete of who am I? What do I do now? My identity's been lost. So we're really trying to help those athletes plan in advance for what they can do when they retire, whether that is staying within their sport or finding something completely different.
Finally, Beth, what's your appraisal of the Olympics this year? Do you think it was the right decision to actually have the Olympics? And how hard must it be for those athletes performing without a crowd?
Yeah, it has been a very different games, but I think if you ask any of those athletes, whichever the country they're from, would you have rather the Olympics go ahead with no audience or not at all? They have worked so hard over the past 5 years, especially over the past 18 months, where it was, is it happening? Is it not? They've had to work in their gardens. Max Whitlock was using a pommel in his garden, to actually be able to go out to those Olympics, become an Olympian, whether that's the first time or the second, third, fourth time, and to potentially get that medal round their necks. I'm sure every single athlete will have said it is worth it. Yes, it is very different without a crowd, but all of the kind of host nation, their own nations, have done everything they can to make it as normal as possible for them. And it's just been great to see how well the Team GB athletes have adapted to it. And obviously within my own sport, to see Max winning his medal today was amazing. And obviously the British girls bringing home that historic third in the team was, it was an emotional moment.
Well, look, it's been emotional having you on the show, Beth. You've achieved so much for this country and you're still doing amazing work spreading the message about gymnastics and general fitness among young people. And in that task, in that challenge, we wish you well. Thank you so much for joining us. The amazing Beth Tweddle. Really inspiring stuff.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.